I do 4 shows a week, hot 10 books on the secondary market. I talk about FOC books. I talk about nostalgia, but not all people watch all those things. So they only know me from one area. I get people that say to me they don't like the drama. And then I get twice as many people saying you should do a whole show about drama. In this content world, at some point, somebody's going to say they don't like how you do something. You're a public figure. You got to be okay with that.
All right, back once again on the podcast with Bryan McClay from Beyond Wednesdays. Bryan, man, thanks for hopping back on. It's always good to see you.
Anytime, brother. You know that.
You know, I say this every time that we talk, but I feel like you always, have your finger on the pulse when it comes to the comic culture, at least as it exists within our niche circle of YouTube and Instagram and social media. So it's always good to talk to you and pick your brain on that sort of stuff, because I'm always trying to figure out like where the community is at, what's like the vibes right now.
Yeah.
And so what do you think, where do you think we are? Is like just a broad question. I mean, last time we saw each other were San Diego Comic-Con. Do you think we're still in like San Diego Comic-Con, all's great in comics world, or has the tune changed already?
I think there's some things that are kind of on the horizon, or like kind of rumbling underneath, that could cause some issues, I imagine. But for the most part, I'm pretty positive of what's happening, man. I'm looking at the landscape of the big publishers, some of the stuff that's going on in the big publishers. I'm looking at the landscape of, the indie guys and what, the big sale of Boom, the dominance of Skybound over the last couple of years. And then I'm looking at kind of what's going on the secondary market. And there's some interesting things that kind of make me feel a little bit positive, but there's some monsters that, are coming from the grading world that we're hearing, and that could be some major issues. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, let's go back to San Diego, because that was really fun. I mean, I know we're a little bit past that, but we haven't had like our little postmortem about it together. What do you think about the show overall compared to like prior years?
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. I think that for the last 2 years, it's kind of been like subdued a little bit, right? We came out of the pandemic and it was kind of like just small little type thing. And then when the next year, it was kind of like cool, but everybody was on strike. Everybody's kind of no movie stuff, no TV stuff. It was just comic stuff, and that felt great. But this year, it felt like there was just enough of that entertainment value, right? The Deadpool Wolverine stuff, the drone show, amazing, perfect. The amount of people wasn't too crazy. I kind of quit going to San Diego once it started getting crazy after Twilight. It kind of like, I lost, kind of some of that vibe of like, this isn't a comic show anymore. This is Hollywood. And this year it felt like a nice mix of both. You know what I mean? On top of that, I had a great time. I mean, when you have a good time, in general, it's going to make the show memorable. So it was probably the best show that I've been to. And that's, I'm not saying I've been to, hundreds of shows, but I've been to quite a few San Diegos. I've been to quite a few other cons throughout the country. This year by far was the best show that I've been to. It was a blast.
Yeah. I definitely had a ton of fun as far as like all the social stuff, hanging out, seeing people, talking to people, interacting with the community. For sure, San Diego, to me, is the best show in that regard. Is it the best comic buying show? No, not even close. But like, you don't really go to San Diego for that. I mean, you can, but you're there really to like soak in and take in the culture through, just all the sights and sounds. And so that's really what it's about. And if people are out there have never been, I mean, I think it's absolutely worth at least one time in your collecting life to go to San Diego, which 100%. I know it can be an expensive trip for people who, are not like local, but like it's totally worth it. But
it's worth saving up for throughout the year to make that show that one time, at least, for sure.
Yeah. But one thing, I noticed San Diego is I did a little video on my channel talking about it. I'm curious what you think about this. Like, I felt like the vintage section, which had always been getting smaller, like in the past years, but I felt like this year in particular, it was even tinier, and more than it being smaller, it was like uh, mixed in with modern publishing booths or like other retail variants, or you had like people doing like, Hit Parade, like, I don't know if you know that company, doing like kind of like
Yeah.
more mystery box stuff. Torpedo Comics was there, but Torpedo Comics' whole booth was like nothing was vintage. It was all like, oh, we're gonna have like signings with these actors and have
Yep.
Essentia there and all that stuff. And
Yep.
so like this silver and gold age pavilion, like it just is kind of evaporating there. And I'm curious if like what you think about that overall, like we're especially for, I guess, broader picture, what you think about vintage comics right now. I mean, we had the
I
Doom news
went.
and all that, and there's a lot of people buying stuff,
Yeah.
but I don't know. What's your sense?
So usually I think that for most comic fans that go to San Diego on the regular basis, they'll like have they'll have like one thing that they'll splurge on, whether it's a piece of original art or Silver Age, Golden Age book, something that they've been looking for. They usually splurge for
Mm,
that one piece. You know what I mean? And I find a guy every year that has these weird, like underground 70s stuff that I love, the weird stuff. And I go straight to his place first, and I'll splurge. That's where I'll spend my money that for that con on comics. And he wasn't there this year. It was the first time he wasn't there, and I noticed that big time throughout most of the con that there wasn't a lot of digging pavilions or tables or retailers. It was maybe like 4 or 5 short boxes, a bunch of modern variants and retailer exclusives, that they've gathered throughout the years. It definitely felt like those, cool digging holes they're gone. They're or dried up,
yeah, definitely more like new product versus like, yeah, like you said, anything that is vintage related. And even if
Yep.
you stray away from comic books, I mean, that also feels true, for other collectibles. Like I'm somebody who likes alpha magic cards. And I
Uh-huh.
was just kind of like wandering around in the card section being like, oh, I wonder if any table has like, vintage magic. And it's like, nobody did. So I don't know, it's interesting. And
Yep.
maybe that's always been the case with San Diego, but I just felt like this year in particular, it was more evident to me.
Yeah. One of the things that my buddy that told me that he does every year is he'll, bring a bunch of books that he knows have really good trade value, and he'll go from each booth to booth and trade. If he sees something that he likes there, he'll say, "Hey, I have these. Do you want any of these? You want to do some trading?" And he usually will do that in the first couple of days. And
Yeah.
like he didn't even do it this year. It was
Mm.
maybe he traded with like one person, and usually he trades with 10 tables, and so for the most part, yeah, that stuff's dying. It's dying. It's artists at your booth, like you said. It's the variants you put out that week, or you had something set up for that week, which a lot of the bigger retailers did. Um, but I'll tell you, man, one thing I was surprised at is, and I talked about this already, walking out on Sunday, I ran into the guys at KRS Comics, and
Mhm.
I went and talked with them, and I didn't know who I was talking to at first. I just, I got this message on Instagram. Hey, if you're, walking around the con, stop by, say hello. And I'm figuring I'm just going to go talk to somebody that kind of works there. And at the final day, as we're walking out, I'm like, hey, I want to go stop over there. So I go stop over there, and I'm talking to the two owners. Shout out to Chris and Jose, two great guys that really surprised me. I was a really down, not, I wouldn't say down, but I wasn't up on like what life is like for new retailers. They're not making as much profit anymore. They're having to battle so many other retailers doing the exact same thing they're doing. It's tough to get into that retailer game. And then, you have all the things in the kind of the background noise of are the print runs real? Is this killing, a lot of resale value? Are you hurting your brand? Are you helping your brand? And they said some things to me that really surprised me and made me think like, okay, if there's more people out there that are thinking like this, then comics they'll figure it out. We just need the retailers and the publishers, especially DC and Marvel, to work with these retailers for better quality, right? A
Right.
lot of these retailers, they want better. They'll give up a little bit of money for better quality, so that they could sell more product, have more people be excited about it, make more per book rather than having to spend for so many copies, something like that. There's ways that they can work with them, figure out ways to be better about the covers you're choosing for which books. I feel like if Marvel and DC worked together with some of these retailers and said, hey, where should we put this cover this week? Should it be on, or this month? Should it be a ratio? Should we use it for something else? And I think that's important. Also being transparent about your print run. They told me this and I said, I'm going to talk about this everywhere. I hope you guys are good with it. And they're like, we don't, they basically said, we don't like to go out and be, put our faces out there or anything. And so, but, we don't mind if you talk about it. So I told them I was, because I thought it was amazing. They told me they work with this company. I think it's called Shredded. And, they shred all their unsold copies, they're overrun, that type of stuff. It's all documented. It's all monitored, and to me, that's, that type of transparency and saying that you're doing that. They're like, we don't want our brand to be devalued. We don't want, people to have it in their mindset that this might not be the print run, they care about that. And that's a big deal. And when you start hearing that more and more, which, there's a lot of people that, I already, know and work with that I think are on the up and up when it comes to, what they think about the comic book industry and how to be retailers in the industry and being progressive retailers and thinking outside the box and thinking differently in a productive way. And I'm seeing more and more of that. So that was the good thing. Right. But, the biggest monster of all of San Diego to me was the grading, fog, right? There was this cloud over San Diego. Like everybody's going, did you see the PSA, things? CGC was there and there was, some scandal going on while we were there,
Wait, there was?
Well, with that just happened right before it, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So, they're all talking about all those CGC things that have already happened. You had a question with the guy in Texas. What's the guy's name?
Richard, the dealer.
Yes.
You're talking about him? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his comment just blew me away, bro. But it blew me away because there's more than just him that are, expressing their concern about PSA and how they're going to do things in their new grader. And that's very eye-opening.
It's very interesting because, I met Mark Wilson, who is the head grader at PSA. And, the PSA had a little get-together, a little dinner thing, and they invited some people and I got to go. And so I had a great conversation with him, and he seemed like a really good guy and wanted to do well, with the company. But I don't know any of the history with him. He's somebody who's been in it for so long. He's definitely before my time. But in talking to a lot of the dealers, wanting to get their insights on what they thought about PSA, I went up, I do the kind of the usual video I do where I'll just interview the people. And so, out of courtesy, I'll usually let the dealers know before I film, I'm thinking about asking you this, and then, this, just so they can wrap their head around what we're going to talk about. And I gotta be honest, with maybe half of the people that I went up to and I said, I want to ask you about PSA and what you think about, their product and the thing and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of them gave that look of that grader, that thing. And it was interesting to me because, there's a lot of baggage in that look, and I don't know what it is. And I don't know if it's is this warranted or is this just sort of you guys had personal issues from back in the day, and so it's really hard to say. I don't know if there's a unicorn candidate that they would hire that everyone in the community would be we're so happy. Even if they got Matt Nelson to go to PSA, that would come with baggage too. There's no one who has a perfect record. But all that being said, when I talked to Richard, I was surprised with how candid he was about it. And I think my face was a little bit Like that's when when I was talking to him recording, and I was like, wow, like I mean we're gonna put this out there, and you're definitely going to let it be known. And actually, you know, a couple of the other PSA were curious to, you know, maybe squash that or talk to him about it. And so I don't know what kind of conversations were had and stuff, but I thought that was pretty interesting how people felt so
Yeah.
passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah, and these are retailers that you're gonna probably be working with,
Yeah.
or wanting to work with at least, you know. If somebody's got a table at San Diego, there's somebody if I'm PSA, I'm gonna wanna, you know, send me your books. You know, I want if you're gonna show off my books at big cons and go around the country, yeah, send me your books. Let's work out a deal. But the same things that you're talking about are the same things that I've heard,
Mm-hmm.
people when people were first trying to find out who the grader was. And, I had some friends that would say, hey, we're hearing it's this guy, we're hearing it's this guy. And I don't know who he is. I'm like you. I don't have the history and the industry stuff. So I'm, asking, well, what do you think about him? And for the majority of the people either said, well, I don't really know him, but the people that did know him were a little, kind of hesitant of, I don't know if this is a good idea, but we'll see. Or, we're just straight up, I don't like the choice. Not that I don't like him, but I don't like the choice, basically.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. You know what's interesting?
or they were candid.
And you know what's interesting? Maybe you'll know this more. Like, it's funny how the head grader has become like a thing in comic books compared to, as far as I understand it. And again, I'm not a card expert. I think you're going to know better than I. Like, does anyone know the head sports card grader at PSA? Like, are they a
Yeah.
public figure? Are they?
I imagine they are, but it's not something you hear about a lot. And I monitor a lot of that content.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
don't think I don't think that it is. Like I don't
yeah,
think, and maybe that's for the better, right? Like because it's almost like too much weight to put onto like an individual face. Like
yeah,
Matt Nelson, I feel like has to absorb so much of like, whatever CGC stuff is going on. But at the end of the day,
uh-huh,
like he's just, I mean, he's the president. So yes, he's sort of the public face of the company. But at the same time, like so many times when CGC does something bad, like if, recently they're kind of had this Ben situation that's going on. That's like a quality control thing that I don't know if he has any hand in that aspect of the company. But I almost just sort of wonder in these grading things, like should there be a head grader that is so public facing?
I think you're right. I think that if I was PSA, I wouldn't want that information to get out there. If I was to set up my, you know, grading company, I think that I would rather just have a PR representative, right?
Yeah.
The person that's going to go on shows like this, the person that's going to go to cons and talk at cons, the person that's going to tell, his little team of social media people, hey, put this out. I want this out. I want this out. I want to talk about this. People that contact him, he sets up, hey, I'll come on your show. If I can't, I'm going to have somebody that will come on your show, that type of thing. And you don't talk about who the graders are at all. Yeah, 100%. There's no reason to. Um, and every time I walked by CGC's booth, Matt was there holding court and was busy. So
Oh
you could
yeah.
tell, you know what I mean? Like you're right. That's a lot of, I'm not gonna say pressure, but it's a lot of work that you have to go through because basically that's what he is at this point, right? He's their
Yeah.
PR guy.
Yeah. And and as you say it, I do think like, oh, well, that would be kind of sad, right? If we had to live in a world where you didn't get to have these sort of interactions with these people, or there wasn't that kind of transparency of like, oh, here's who the head grader and stuff. But I guess it's like this is why we can't have nice things because
Yeah.
there's just it's going to lead to issues in a lot of ways. And so I don't know
Well,
if it's like good or bad,
let's be honest. When it comes to there's money involved in this, a lot of this,
Mm.
a lot of these people have worked together for many years, and when that happens, and there's always like that, underlying drama that's out there, no matter what. It's the way humans are, especially when there's money involved too. So
Oh
you're
yeah,
gonna hear.
100%. Do you think that two questions here with PSA and CGC before we kind of put a bow on that? Do you think PSA has a chance to really make a splash in the market? And then two, I don't know if it's just, the loudest voices on social media with CGC. You know, anytime I make a CGC video, we're going to see it in the comments, right? Grading is a scam. You know, it's going to be heavily upvoted, all that stuff. And I understand where that feeling is coming from. But at the same time, like, you go to San Diego Comic-Con, like you said, the booth is packed. There are so many people that are grading their books. Anyways, I say that to kind of ask you, do you think that CGC can sort of get back to a place where there's just trust once again in the company, and like people have kind of a non-cynical outlook towards them as a company?
Not anymore. Not after. And this is why, well, I shouldn't say not absolute. I say, yeah, there's a chance. I think they would have to do some major transparency moves. You know what I mean? Like, be like, hey, what do you guys want to know? We want to be open as a company. We're going to gain that trust back. But there's been so many little hits, right? You know, the newsstand switcheroos, with the Mark Jewelers, the cases that they've won or lost. You know, the one that they lost, that's a big deal, because that's kind of, when you look at that whole thing, it's kind of cheesy how it was handled, and for that to come out in court is a big deal, because then you can't say, well, this didn't happen. Well, it happened because we found out, because they went through court over it, you know, and this is what they went through discovery. This are the things that they found. You know, it doesn't look good for them. But here's the other thing. I'm starting to hear more and more from more and more people, and it's just starting. It's been like 2 or 3 months now of people saying that graded books aren't selling for them like they normally do. And there's this weird flip that's kind of happening, you know, and with that happening at the same time as there being this little bit of distrust, if CGC books start selling for less, they lose all their power. All their power is based on the secondary market. If they start selling, if there's a drop in popularity for graded books and it's harder and harder to sell them, maybe PSA has a chance to jump in there and take that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if CGC would have been transparent and would have had some type of PR person, you know, a few months, maybe a year ago, you know, that kind of came in and quieted everything down, made some better choices on like the little videos that they put out, I think there could have been they could have just, you know, taken their dominance back in a big way. Right now, the only reason that they have that quote unquote dominance is because they're the sales on the secondary market. You know, that's a monster.
Just for the sake of it, if I'm gonna like steel man like the pro CGC position, and people will call me, you know, swaggle shill right now, but like, what if CGC came out and just said, guys, we just fucked up. We're sorry. We're just trying to create a product and grade your books, and we're not perfect. And, you know, we're going to make mistakes, but we always, at the end of the day, want to do it right. Like, would that have been enough? Or do you think that, like, here's where I'm going with this. And again, I'm trying to steel man like the other side of it. Doesn't CGC just put a number on a book, and whatever the buyers and sellers do with that number, whatever they pay for it, whether they overpay or they underpay or whatever, like, that's kind of up to them, right? Like, are they just this kind of neutral body, or do you think that they put their fingers too much into like the culture and kind of like overstepped? What's your feeling on that?
I don't think they put their fingers enough into the culture. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like their social media influence is lacking in a big way. I mean, they've just kind of started getting into that, and some of the things they put out were questionable, you know, like it was kind of laughable. But at least they're trying. But here's the biggest problem. There's so many inconsistencies in their grading, you know. I know guys that are just sending $25 lots, you know, every day, every couple days, and they'll get some back that are consistent and some that are way off, some back that are consistent, some that are way off. And then, you know, we start hearing about this issue with the spine ticks, and, you know, You know, being able to get into those things so easily with the Mark Jewelers was an issue. Maybe they changed how they spot weld those cases, and now there's too much pressure in there, and it's causing the book to bend in what the little vacuum seal it's in. There's something going on there that's causing a major worry for people out there. And once that starts happening, you're kind of screwed. They need to come out and they need to say, okay, here is what do we need to do? Get some people together, get some ideas, say, we're going to be very transparent with our grading process. This is what it means if you have these on here, and they need to be more consistent about it, because when 99 Newsstand and Dave Vengers, did their thing, and the question got asked, like, how come there's not a 99 UF4 and there's so many thousands graded? And on top of that, there was also talk about, even a 99 could have a spine tick or whatever he said. It's like, hold on here. And then you get books back that are perfect, and you're going, there's no way this is a 9.8 all day. There's people that know how to grade books. There's pressers that press books and send in so many books that you can send them a picture, and if it's a good enough picture, they can grade your book very well, front and back. They're going to give you a great grade, and I trust those people's eyes. And when those guys are sending in books and they're saying, hey, this should be a 9.6 to 9.8, and it comes back an 8.5 or a 9.0, you're like, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. And it's happened a lot with modern product too. For a while there, everybody's getting those 9.9s and their 10s, and then all of a sudden, it's back to a little bit stiffer grading, and it's not consistent. It doesn't feel consistent to me.
It definitely changes. That feels like it's for sure. I mean, and I don't know if it's something that they should be more forthright with that, because let's be honest, like, this feels like it's very apparent to me with the whole 9.9 thing, where when they started, they had a grading scale or standard that they did. And in fairness to like Matt Nelson, he joined the company from like in their middle of their whole thing. So it's like there was a standard that existed, and then he came in, and then they were like, you're the head grader now. And then it was like, hey, we should probably write a grading guide. So then he had to write this grading guide. And then he's probably, as he's writing, is like, well, we didn't quite do that back in the day, and we're now changing it. So it's like there has been this evolution, and they probably had this honest conversation with themselves in the building where they were like, by our standards, there should be way more 9.9s.
Yes.
So they're now forced with a question. Do they just say, you know what, we've been doing it this way, and just kind of hand waving away 9.9s and like, this is what everyone accepts, let's just not do it? Or do they say, you know what, starting today, let's just be what it is. If it's a 10, let's give it a 10. If it's a 9.9, just give it a 9.9. And like, that's what we'll do. And it seems like that's what they decided to do. Whether that's like, because they're like, oh, here's their way to get more money from CPR type of stuff, or they just legitimately, altruistically were like, hey, you know what, we should actually be very by the book now, and we should actually grade to what it should be. I don't know. It depends on your outlook, if you're, positive or negative about the grading as an entire industry, but it feels like it was an active change for them to do this. And I don't know if it was the right or wrong answer either. Like, I don't know if it's like, hey, the system is the system, and we should just do this until the end of collecting. I don't know. I don't know what would have been right.
Change in what the community wants and looks at their books, but those grading standards should never change, right? That's the ideal, right? Because if something gets graded 20 years ago, you want that when you're buying that book, you want to make you don't want. How many times have you heard like, oh, if you buy this company's label at this time period, it's going to be graded better than the other companies because they had this guy there and they're on a better, like we hear that all the time with certain CBCS. When it first came out, they were so tight on their grades. So you could, buy, 9 6s and 9 4s over there and send them over to crack them and send them over to CGC and get 9 8s because they were so strict on their books. Are they that same way anymore? I don't know. So you don't want that. It's the ideal thing is to have the grading standard be what it is throughout time, but that's not gonna happen. Not with collectibles. Yeah, it's just it's unfortunate, but in my opinion, it is what it is. But here's the thing: like, I think they could have done it a little bit better in hindsight. Of course, what at the time, I can't blame them, but in hindsight, they could have maybe slowed the roll on a little bit of it. When you're seeing all these 10s and 9s on modern books, that's one thing. But once you start seeing I don't know how many of those 221s came out, 9 9s and 10s, or how many of those Wolverine ones or whatever it was. There was what's his name on YouTube? Sorry, I'm blanking on his name.
Bryan?
He's putting out videos.
Oh yeah, Automatic.
Weekly. Yeah, Automatic Comics. Yeah, he's putting out videos weekly that are like these amazing things that are just falling in his lap that are, it feels like the same story but different books. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which lends credence to the idea that this has to be sort of a top-down kind of initiative, right? It's not like, hey, here's sort of a anecdotal, I got a 9/9. It's like, no, there's more 9/9s coming up, more so than everyone. And then also, Neo Carts and Comics, he had a system where he was tracking 9/9s and he could see it on the monthly basis. It was just going up and up, or I should do it like this, up and up and up. So I don't know. It's crazy. And I can see why they decided to make the decision that they did. But I mean, it also makes sense as to why the community was not going to be happy about that. And, back to the original thing, I wonder if we can ever get to a point where, again, the cynicism towards CGC goes away. Obviously, everyone is still going to use CGC.
Yeah.
Like everyone is too ingrained into. Go ahead.
PSA. You brought that up and you said, what do you?
Oh yeah.
Here's the thing with PSA. If PSA comes out and you have people like Neo Sports Cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Northeast Ohio. I don't know what he goes by, but I've been following his account for a long time. I love his sports card, content. And you see people like him getting more involved into comic books. PSA could play off of that sports card culture, right? You get a lot of these guys in the sports card world that maybe weren't into comics, but now they want to kind of dabble their toes in. They start grading books like Amazing Spider-Man 300, Spawn 1, Spider-Man 1, X-Men 1. You start seeing those books be graded at PSA, be sold on the secondary market. If that happens and more of those card guys get involved, I could see something happening and PSA taking over that high value of, okay, now we're going to start seeing some books that X-Men 266, Hulk 181, you start seeing some bigger books. And then if those start getting more than CGC, because you got these sports card guys that maybe are willing to pay a little bit more because it's in a PSA holder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, that seems like that's the clear cut, demo to go after right away, or genre of comics to get. And, I think that the PSA is going to be successful regardless. I think just from their own ingrained audience, like you said, the sports card person that just wants their Todd McFarlane Spider-Man 1 to match the rest of their wall of sports cards, just that customer base alone, I think is going to make this division of PSA successful. It's really do they capture the lion's share of the vintage section? Will you, if you have your, AF-15 or your, Punch Comics, 11 or whatever, are you going to send it to PSA? What's it going to take for that? And I think that one is going to be a bigger uphill battle, but I mean, we'll have to see.
Their cases are so heavy, bro, and
Oh,
they're just so bulky.
They're twice the weight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a big issue. Like, if people are okay with that, then sky's the limit. But how bulky those things are, and they say they're like that for a reason, right? They want their cases to be, it can be dropped from a 4-story building, and whatever. They want to make sure that you're not getting any damage to that book in there, and that's one of the things that they're going to ride on. And in order to do that, that case needs to be bulky. Now, I don't like the way the label looks. I think seeing red on a comic book, a graded comic, is like kind of, you instantly think, I don't want that. I know they don't want to do blue. I think yellow would look great, but we'll see how that plays out. The card people, depending on how much they're going to get involved, they're going to want that red label, and here's the other thing. Magazines, sports magazines.
Oh yeah,
right?
That's going to be huge for them.
Yeah. So once that starts happening, that'll be a big deal too. So we'll see. And we'll see how their grading team plays out too. Like, are they going to have issues?
Well, no matter how it plays out, I'm sure there's going to be lots of drama to talk about with them in the future. Which, speaking of, I'm sure that they'll end up on your weekly segment called Comic Book Drama Report that you do on the Beyond Wednesday shows. I want to talk to you a little bit just about comic book drama, or just drama on YouTube.
Yes,
there feels like there's a lot of it, and people are interested in it. I think from the back side here, as people who make YouTube videos, we know, like, if there's a topic like that we're going to have that day in a video or stream or whatever, which ones people are going to tune into versus which ones are not going to get as many people.
Yes.
And it tends to be right now that I think drama gets a lot of views. What's your sense on comic drama, and I don't know, just that whole human behavior? And is it specific to comics, or is this just YouTube? What do you kind of think about comic drama right now?
I go in waves. Do I think it's, just in comic books, us comic book guys, we're a little bit outsiders for the most part. Is it just how we are as comic book collectors? And I kind of used to think that was a big part of it. But as I get older, I just see it in so many other places. You see it in workplaces. You see it in, father, sons, sports leagues. It's everywhere, and it's just a human nature. That's what it is. And either you have to handle it some way, right? The good people are able just to, no problem. I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm definitely not going to talk about it. And then there's other people that want to talk about it a lot, and, they get something out of it. They probably get a little bit of a rush out of it. They see their numbers growing. And then there's the people that I think, for the most part, they kind of pick and choose how they want to handle it, because there's certain things that especially when you're part of this content creation community that's out there, right? For the most part, we kind of talk to each other, and we hear about other people, and, for the most part, you're going to talk about it. You're going to figure out a way to talk about it. And for me, it was like, if I'm going to figure out a way to talk about it, I'm just going to turn it into a segment. I'm going to get a ton of people giving me the information no matter what, because that was the reason I did it. It was like, I have all these people sending me DMs. Here's what this person is saying. Look at what this person is doing. And then there's some real stuff to talk about, right? There's like real stuff that need to be talked about, but I'll just throw it in a drama segment. And I get people that say to me, they don't like the drama. They don't, why do you got to talk about the drama? And then I get twice as many people saying you should do a whole show about drama. You know what I mean? And, I couldn't do that. There's no way that's just going to, like, that's playing too much. You're dipping too many, too much in the dark side water,
Yeah.
when you do that, and you'll get pulled in and it'll just rule your life. But if I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna do it in a way that I'm gonna laugh about it. I'm gonna
Mm.
do it in a way that I think is funny. If you're part of that community and you do something stupid that I think, is kind of funny, I'm gonna, laugh about it. And I try not to be too, you know, um, I don't know what the word is, but like I don't want to be too much of an asshole. I'm not that type of person.
Mean-spirited.
Yeah, mean spirited. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm not that type of person. I don't think I could be that. Um, but listen, we all, especially as men, we feel a way when we hear when somebody takes a shot at us, or we hear somebody's continuing to take a shot at us, and that type of thing. And it kind of pushes us along every once in a while, and you kind of push back, right? Um, and sometimes you do it in a public place, in a public way. And because that's happened so much, now I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to be an open book on this stuff. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to be honest about it. This is what I think. And my mind can be changed also. Like, there's been times where, if I'm talking bad about somebody, that's something that they've done, and I say, hey, if you want to come on and change my mind, come on and change my mind. Tell me why it happened. Why'd you do it? Not everything is black and white in life. As a matter of fact, most of the things are in that gray, nuanced zone. So let's talk about it. I'm always that type of person that will allow somebody to come on, and there's always a seat open. But also, if you do something stupid and I'm already kind of feeling a way about you, I'm gonna zero in and laugh about it. I'll be like,
Yeah.
what the fuck was this?
Do you think
But
people have to respond to being called out on the internet these days? Like, what's your feeling on that? If you do something that you find yourself on a thumbnail somewhere else, or you do
yeah,
something that it gets put in the drama segment, does that person need to talk about it? What do you think about that?
I have so much respect for the people that don't. I'll put it that
Mm.
way.
Okay.
I have a lot of respect for people that don't, because it is very, very hard not to do.
Yeah.
And and but here's the other thing. I think that sometimes it's okay to make a phone call, behind the scenes. Hey, uh, you know, um, is this something that I should worry about, or is this just a joke? Is this just a shtick? That type of thing. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with, if you have to kind of let it be known, like, hey, is this something I need to worry about? Let me know. But being able to not even worry about it and just, brush it off, that's like Jedi powers, bro. I I I don't know how you do it. I don't. And I give
Yeah,
you a lot.
I don't do it well. I'll definitely get snarky about it, but because the thing is like, I feel so many different ways about this. If we're going to talk about me in being dragged into drama and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's really a strange thing. And maybe people who don't like necessarily create content, like, don't think about this, but at a certain point, you start doing stuff. You start making YouTube videos. You start posting on Instagram or whatever. And this is especially true if you're going to put your face in your content,
Yes.
as opposed to being like
Yes.
completely an avatar or something like that. But
Amen.
you're just putting it out into the world, and you can see that there's like, oh, like 20 people watched it. Oh, okay, 50 people watched it. You can see that there's numbers there, but it doesn't quite process that they're real people. You just kind of record and you put it out there or whatever. And then, it might start to grow. And eventually it gets to a point where, yeah, you become a conversation in someone else's world within
Yes.
social media or the internet or something. And that's kind of a trip, because that's when it becomes real. Like, at least for me, it was like, oh, people are actually listening to me, which
Yes.
I know it sounds stupid. Of course they were, but then it became like, it was a very sobering moment where it's like, oh wow, like, okay, like I'm on a thumbnail here, or like, hey, people are dragging me in, or hey, people didn't like what I said over there.
Yeah.
And now they
Yeah.
want to, say something back to me or whatever. So it's a very interesting thing. And part of it, for me, I feel two ways about it, because I don't like being mischaracterized. So
Oh, yeah.
if I hear someone say, this is what Swagglecast said, and that's not what I said, that's really frustrating, because I want to make sure that, hey, if we're going to criticize me, let's criticize me based on what I actually said,
Yes.
So I in those instances, I might try to clarify that stuff. But on the
Yeah.
other end of it, I view my YouTube show as, it's not like about me per se. It's really more like, hey, I'm here to be, I don't know, a voice, or to whatever is going on in vintage collecting culture,
Spotlight. Yeah.
or pop culture, or whatever, or comics. And I'm just kind of serving that to the community in a way. And I'm putting my personality and humor into it, but I'm trying to be as neutral as what feels appropriate. So that
Yeah.
all of a sudden, if my YouTube is about me beefing with Bryan, I don't know if that's what people signed up for. Although I know that that's what people would be interested to watch. So I don't know. It's a hard thing for me to balance, like what makes sense to respond to versus not.
It's a very weird thing. You hit on it. When your face is out there as your brand, your real name, and then, you go even deeper when you talk about your life and your real life, you know, as opposed to some people that they don't put their picture isn't them, their name isn't them,
Yeah.
for the most part. That's a big difference, like that means a lot when you put that stuff out there. But at the same time, it can be tough, right? Because you hear people, that moment that you hear people say, "Oh, I saw him do this and it wasn't something that you did," or you said this about this person and it wasn't the way you said it. That's very like, I want to fix that. All right. I'm going to, jump on and get a little animated, and I'm going to say, "Hey, no, this is what I said." Or at the same time, you could say, "Hey, I meant to say this, and I messed up by saying this," right? The other great thing about being able to come out and talk about those things is to be able to say that you are wrong sometimes too, right? That's a big moment in a lot of creators' world, when you have to do that. You have to eat a little crow, and you gain maybe a little bit, people look at you a little bit more genuine.
Yeah.
But your content, though, how you do your content is different too. Like, you're not doing a lot of live stuff. And when it's live, sometimes, you can't stop you're a person who's on with you asking a question, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love Red Hood. He is one of my favorite people in the world, man. Like, he's a good friend, and he's so funny, he's so knowledgeable. And sometimes I just know Red Hood he's just going to ask the question. He's not going to let it linger.
Yeah.
And if you're on live, you have to roll with it. When you're able to, kind of choose what you want to say, and you're kind of good at it, I'm sure, I'm positive that there's times where you might have recorded something and said, "Hey, maybe I shouldn't put this out," and you don't. And you're good about asking people, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Also, that's another good thing. So that's what I mean. Like that's like Jedi powers, bro. That's force powers. You have that most people can't pull that off. And it's a
Sometimes I wish I didn't pull my punches as much, to be honest, because
yeah,
I'll say this. There have been times when I've recorded stuff and I was like, man, I went really hard. And then like I have to edit it to post.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
listen to myself back, which, listening to yourself back, by the way, is a very, very like it's a unique experience. I don't know if a lot of people do it until you like make content where you're like, oh, I can see myself in the mirror more clearly than I used to before I did YouTube, for instance.
Yes.
Anyways, but when I listen to myself back, I'm always like, oh, I did not go nearly as hard as I thought. I don't think I've ever really, put my full weight into a punch.
Listen, I've had it all happen, right? I've had moments where, I'm so angry that you kind of lose it and you're kind of yelling and you're being caveman and not letting somebody else talk. That's when you're mad. There's the difference from being that mad and being, a little into it. I'm passionate about this. This isn't me being angry. Don't think I'm angry. And then I've had the people I've been on the other end where the person loses their shit on you, and they're the ones that are screaming and won't let you talk and this and that. Those moments are very interesting. And I think that there's something special about YouTube where it's kind of like okay to have that. You know what I mean? That's what makes this content so fucking good. This content is like, I don't know if you remember the first time you saw the show The Real World. I remember the first time I saw The Real World, it was the first season, and they did it was the night before their finale, and they did like the whole season up to the finale. And I just happened to see the first episode, and I watched the whole season and watched the finale that night. It was just mind-changing, groundbreaking. It was the craziest thing. It was pure addiction watching these, like, this is real life. Well, guess what, you guys? The YouTube is that on steroids times 1,000. You know what I mean? Like, this is real life, and the drama involved is very addicting, and people, it's a weird thing, bro. It's a different thing.
Is it all content? Is it all like?
That's a great question.
Is it all a work? To quote sort of like the wrestling thing.
Yeah. Some people treat it that way, but some people don't. I think that Sticky Goose is very work like, right? I think for the most part, the way he does things, it's kind of like a shtick. But I think that it's obvious that there's times that it's not. So yeah, I think a lot of, like, he's the type of creator that does a lot of shtick stuff. There's nothing that's a work for me. Like, I'm so honest, and I wear that on my sleeve. And I think that there's a lot of in between. There's people out there that's their whole point, is to be trolls. That is YouTube culture, man. Like,
oh yeah,
if there's anything, Halo waiting rooms back in the early 2000s were fucking crazy, right? That is where YouTube is born of.
That's definitely the internet. Like the internet for sure. And that's this is like, not to derail into like just say Twitter and the political landscape and all this stuff. Like sometimes I just think like, so much of the like clapback culture and stuff is really just people talking shit like they would in an Xbox lobby. Like, how much do people really believe some of the stuff they throw out there? But I guess that's where a lot of the friction comes, because like on the one hand, you're serious, but on the other hand, it's just a joke, and everyone rides this line of like plausible deniability, where it's sort of like, I was just kind of joking, man, but
well,
but it's kind of,
I understand that, because there's sometimes, listen, I'll be honest about it. When I'm talking, and that stuff comes up, I'll say, hey, this is my content, and I'll say this is the type of content that I do. It's not, my stuff isn't all about that type of thing, obviously. I'm very nuanced in the content I put out there. It's about so many different things. But on Saturday nights, man, there's a segment where it's going to come up. Most likely, if there's drama that week, it's going in that drama alert segment, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to make fun of somebody. We're going to laugh and joke at somebody's expense. And usually if that's going to happen, it's somebody that's done something that I think is kind of stupid or we need to jeer, crowd needs to, cheer at and jeer at, you know what I mean? Like you need to sometimes you need to talk a little shit to somebody for doing something that looks stupid. Okay. And especially when you're doing it in this content world, you're a public figure. You got to be okay with that. Like I have to be okay with that too. You have to be okay with that. At some point, somebody's going to say they don't like how you do something, or they're going to try and troll you, or they're going to be, you should probably take their advice. They're going to tell you something that you might not like, but hey, you know what? You're right. That was kind of a fucking dumb post for me to put up. I probably shouldn't have done that type thing, and that's the way too. This is, it's a weird, it's definitely not Hollywood over here. This is we're real people. This is real lives. There's some people that do play that, but for the most part, I think people that watch, people that join the chat, they treat this is, we're real people, and they treat it as such. They should treat it as such, especially on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that.
Well, I do kind of think that, sometimes my criticism towards the people who lean heavily into drama content when it's specific, say, to like individual people, I think that they forget that the people that they're talking about are real people.
Yes.
And I think it's like, you know what, if you remember that it is a real person, and at the end of the night, you can still put your head on your pillow and you feel okay about what you said, then okay, cool. Stand on that. But I think a lot of people don't quite make the connection.
Yeah. Well, listen, I just had a nice little event where somebody got very heated about something I said. And, when you're in that moment,
should we get into it? I mean, we don't have to, but I
don't mind. I don't mind, I kind of saw something that Bueller did that I didn't agree with. And I kind of called it out and I said, hey, I think this was a pussy move to do this. And I still feel that way. And, part of that, I said it and I put it out there, and Bueller did not like that. And, it turned into a little thing where me and him kind of, he got mad and he kind of let me have it. And I kind of called him a pussy a couple times. And here's the other thing, you know what I mean? Like, listen, this is the thing. Some people take certain words certain ways, right? And maybe I just don't look at that word as it carries that much weight, right? Some people think it carries that much weight also. But here's the thing. Even in this argument that we got into, or this, me kind of calling him out and him kind of saying, getting angry about it. I even said, like, hey, change my mind. Like, my mind can change my mind, give me a reason to not feel this way, put the post back up, talk about it, this and that. He did put out a thing on his Instagram saying, oh, this is why I did it. And good, because I'm sure there was other people that were asked, that if they saw it, that they kind of said, well, what's going on here? This kind of feels a little weird. And, that's the content that I create also. I'm going to keep my eye on that shit. And at the same time, if I hear rumblings and behind the scenes that you don't like me and, you think this way about me, and, I might call you out for it, for doing something stupid in the future. And I think there's a lot of people that has it happen. Do it to me. You know what I mean? If I do something really stupid, I hope somebody calls me out for it. If it's really that bad, if there's something that, five of my close friends call me up and say, hey bro, that didn't look good, I'm going to come out and say, you know what, maybe I should look at this inward and see if I need to change my mind on it. But listen, if I get those same 4 or 5 people that contact me and say, no, you know what, I maybe you were a little heated and you could have said it, you could have not called them pussy 15 times, but I understand it. It is what it is. We're men. We get heated.
Yeah, and to clarify too, it was he made a post about a Neil Adams interview and then kind of asked if he should drop it again, which this was a video interview that he did, and it got a little political with Neil Adams and stuff, and so he asked about it, and he ended up not doing it and taking his post down, and you kind of took issue with that for him sort of dangling this interview carrot. And
yeah.
yeah.
Well, my whole thing was kind of like, dude, here's how I look whenever I'm looking on like social media and stuff. We all have an algorithm of things that it sends us, right? And if I see a post that says something that I'm kind of like, oh, that's kind of weird, the first thing that I'm going to do is to go look at comments and see if other people feel the same way. And I see this post and it says, first of all, the thumbnail is like Neil Adams and Trump, and you see this big, huge, post, this thumbnail of it, and it says something along the lines of like, Neil Adams didn't like Trump also, or Neil Adams didn't like Trump, or something like that. One, that's instantly I'm thinking, okay, you're kind of trying to rile up somebody. Most people would think that. If I put that out, I think that people would think that. And so second of all, I look at what he says, and he says, I did a interview with him that I privated, and should I put it back out? He's very, whatever he says, he talks a lot about Trump in there or something like along those lines. He took the post down, so I can't remember. I can't go and reference it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyways, the first comment that I look at, the guy goes, there's somebody that goes, well, why'd you private it in the first place? And Bueller said, because there were some mean comments. And I'm like, and you don't think there's going to be mean comments on this? Do you not think that there's going to be mean comments when you put it back out? Like, I would think that. I would already know that. I'd be like, yeah, if I'm going to talk political, I know I'm going to get somebody 50-50 probably, but from either side, that's going to start something. It's going to start a little, issue in the comment thread. That's going to happen. So now you're kind of like dangling multi things out there. And then, he takes, not only does he take that post down, he doesn't put the video back out. Put the video out, man. We know what Neil Adams was about. I know what Neil Adams was about. I love Neil Adams. I loved crotchety old Neil Adams. I laughed my ass off every time that he complained about politics or Trump or some politician. He did that on a regular basis. Put it out, But so, I kind of called him out on it,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean,
from my perspective on it, it's like, I don't think that there's any issue with him sort of going back on it and deciding to not put it out. But I think if I were to press him on it, and I met Bueller and I've totally got along with him, and he's a good guy. We've always had great interactions. But if I was going to press him on it, I would sort of say, well, like, I mean, if you kind of dangle the carrot and you have like the post of like, hey, should I put out this interview that gets political? Like, you kind of know what you're doing a little bit, and yeah. Especially, if you've done the YouTube thing for a long time, it's like, I know, like if I got the face palm and CGC, blah, 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 whatever scandal, I know what I'm doing. Like, yes. I know that I'm poking the CGC bear, and people are going to see that. And maybe CGC will reach out to me and say like, hey, that was not actually what happened.
Yeah, you're watering a seed there. And the type of seed that you're watering.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and just to kind of bring it all back to the drama stuff, and it's interesting with the Sticky Goose thing too, which I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that. Him putting out the video where he talked about all the comic book YouTube channels and stuff, and got flagged, and obviously that was a big point of conversation within the content world. Again, I myself would never flag someone's channel. Like, if people want to make fun of me, like, it's totally fine. People do. And, does it feel good? No. But like, I'm not going to stop anyone from doing it. People can do whatever they want. But at the same time, again, it's like, if you're going to make a video like that, while I would never flag it, someone might. I think that's just like, this is what happens. Like, if you put out the post, if you put out a video, if you do something, like, you have to know that someone might call you out on it, or someone might.
You're 100% right, dude.
100%. And I'm not promoting that. I think it's very important. Like, I'm not saying that it's good to bully people or write hateful comments. It's terrible. It's just, this is kind of the sad reality of the internet that we live in.
Yeah. And internet culture. That's the difference. Internet culture. There is there's a culture around YouTube, around the content that is created on content creation sites. There's a culture around it, and that culture is, you have to have thick skin. You have to have thick skin in this culture, and at the same time, you have to value freedom of speech, a freedom of speech. That, like, if you're not breaking some heinous rules of life, you don't take somebody else's platform down. You quit watching it. You talk a little trash about them. You say why maybe you don't like them, or you don't like something they did, and this and that. That's fine, but you don't take down their platform or figure out a way to take down their platform, because it's kind of like you're cutting your own throat. You just haven't done it yet. Once that starts happening and that becomes the norm, somebody's going to go after your place, and that type of thing.
Yeah.
There's people out there that are waiting to do that.
I am a big proponent of being able to cultivate your own space. If you don't like Swagglecast's videos, just right click my channel and say hide channel from suggestions, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's totally fine. I don't really block or delete comments or anything like that, but there have been some people in my YouTube world that have really overstepped, in my opinion. And I was like, I just don't want to see their comments anymore. And I think that's totally fine. You're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But that's really something that's like, that's what you can control, as opposed to like what other people are doing,
Yes. I don't have, I personally am the type of person, and I've talked about this, I'm very open with this. I don't want my mods to block anybody unless I say to block somebody. You know what I mean? I don't want my chat to be an echo chamber. I don't want my comment section to be an echo chamber. I'm very open that, like, constructive criticism is necessary. I want that, and you also can't, you're definitely poking a very big bear once you start not giving the viewers, aka the chat, their due, because that's their role in this internet culture. Like,
I definitely think if you're a video and you don't allow comments, I mean, that's
you're hiding something. People think you're hiding something.
I think that's never a good look. It's never a good look.
Yeah. You take something down, people think you're hiding it. You private something that was already out there. Perfect example is, look what happened with Gem Mint when he took down didn't he take down that whole thing what he put out where he was, after acetate gate, and the reason why,
Okay, this is interesting though, because I think you're allowed to take something down if you feel like, you know what, I don't stand by what I said here. I actually think I regret making this and I want to apologize, and I think that I should take this video down. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay. So,
do you think that, let's say that he put out that video and he's like, actually, you know what, watching this back, seeing the comments, I think I was wrong here.
As long as he puts out something like, okay, so like, I gave Bueller shit for taking down that post, right? And like, and I said, and he told me the reason he took it down is because, he didn't want to see his fans, arguing and saying mean things. And, a Neil Adams fan came to him and told him that Neil Adams fans wouldn't want that, which both of those things aren't true. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of fishy. But if you take that down and then you don't say anything about it, people, and rightfully so, are going to be like, you're hiding something, like, but if you say something about it afterwards, like, come out and say, hey, I took it down because of this. People are wondering why I took it down. I took it down for this, and I feel this way. I'm a little bit okay with that. I personally wouldn't do it, but that can change. You know what I mean? Depending on what happens. Listen, nothing in my world is black and white other than that, I'm going to die. Other than that, my mind can be changed so many different times, depending on the things that happen in my life. So, I'm okay with that personally, but I wouldn't do it. But as long as you're saying why you did it and you're being genuine about that, a perfect example. Okay, let's talk about Gem Mint. So Gem Mint, came out and said, hey, I'm not going to do the Comic Tom thing anymore. One of the reasons was he felt that he was having a hard time just matching Tom's energy, and he felt like he had to match Tom's energy. I felt like him coming out and saying that, I was like, okay, I kind of like this. This feels a little bit more genuine for Jim Mint, because usually when I don't watch his content on the regular, I didn't, because maybe I felt that it was a kind of a little phony how he acted, because it didn't look genuine. It didn't feel genuine, and I don't gravitate to that type of content. I see him explaining, hey, this is why I'm doing it. And it might not come out and look good. And I'm having to, sell my house because we just can't afford it. And we overstepped our, he's being genuine. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to check. I see he's got a new show in the morning. I'm, cleaning my kitchen. I'm going to throw on Jim Mint and see what he's talking about. Oh, I actually like this genuine part of somebody. That's an important thing. You know what I mean? So, stopping that, saying, hey, I'm taking this down, and not hiding it is the part that I'm like, all right, there's another important thing. Now it kind of closes that genuine circle.
Yeah. I think that there's a difference of like, I'm hiding it because I know that I don't want people to know, versus I'm taking it down because I was wrong.
Yes.
Let me give you a very example of something that I've taken down. The only video I've ever taken down on my channel. I once made a video that was best ways to like ship your comic books. And I got something in there with USPS that was factually wrong. And I was like, oh, I got to take this down. And I took it down because I was like, oh, this is wrong. Like, this is not
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that. Yeah. And that's the whole type of thing. Like, things change. Feelings change, right? Facts are one thing. Hey, maybe I got this wrong. I didn't, they've made a change in how they do things, so now I can't have that up there. And also feelings change, man. Like, you could be putting all your, one thing that is very interesting is people sometimes think that if somebody says something on your channel that's like, on your show with you, that you have to stand behind that. You have to stand behind that. You know what I mean? So there's also that weird thing where it's like, no, I'm not going to stand behind what somebody else said. But there's also that thing that say somebody is on your channel on the regular basis, and then you say you're friends with them and you're friends with these people, and you find out something that behind the scenes doesn't make you like them anymore, right? Maybe you don't want to have certain things with them out in your channel because you're like, I don't like these people. But you have to come out and say why. You can't just drop them out of your channel, because people are going to wonder at that point, and they're going to say, you're trying to hide something, as long as you're saying why, things change, man. Of course they change. So I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
Having to take those things out.
Content is it's just such a weird world. Like, the relationship you form with, like, the audience and the viewers, and what feels appropriate to talk about and what not. And it's funny when you talk about the Jim Min thing and it being like, well, he didn't feel authentic. And I always kind of, there's different tonalities from every type of content piece, right? Like, when you do a live, if we were on live right now, and we had chat going, that's one type of sides of our personality that are going to be there. When it's just you and me right now, like, this is another side of our personality. And then when it's just me in the room recording a video, that's like another side of my personality. And people for sure are looking for authenticity, I think, mostly. That said, though, I think sometimes the show is the show, right? Like, I'm doing a recording video. Here's my top 10 lists. Let's just get the show. We don't need to know about how I'm feeling today and Swagglecaste's personal, issues on stuff. It's like, hey, no, book number 10 is this, book number 9 is this. It's just info. So I think that there's different times where different versions of you are more appropriate or not. And that's on him. If he just can't spiritually like do the content anymore, which seemed like he hit that point.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, what you enjoy in the hobby changes.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
You know, my content has changed immensely because ultimately the content you're creating, you for the most part, you're creating because it's fun. You know what I mean? If it's not fun,
Yeah.
the reward is not great if it's not fun. Like in my opinion, you have to enjoy creating the content. And whether that's you know, doing it live and having your buddies there, and that's why you enjoy it, it's become a social thing, or it's like a little zen moment, you know, creating and editing and coming up with cool ways to create videos and cool interviews, like that's become the hobby. This has become my hobby. My content went from being my hobby was, you know, flipping comic books to get bigger comic books, or flipping collectibles to get bigger collectibles. That was my hobby. And that was my content for the longest time. Now my content is, yeah, that's part of my content. I like to talk about that stuff, and this stuff has, you know, some value, and these are what you need to know. But I also like to talk about stories and histories, and I like to talk about, you know, the history of the creators, and you know, I like to talk about how the cheese is made, right? I'm more interested in industry stuff now. I'm more interested in, you know, that all changes, and your content changes with it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Oh yeah.
um
I mean, that's been the process for me as well. You know, just you find different things and different ways to talk about stuff, and I've tried to, as much as I can when appropriate, like incorporate more of, you know, things that I work on in my own life or going through in my own life, and it's like an artistic expression. You know, these are the feelings and things that I'm experiencing in life, and
yeah.
then like now that goes into like the
Yes.
content in some kind of way. You know, you got the alien behind you. You know, you're into the alien thing, and it's like,
Hmm.
well, now, you know, I don't know, maybe you're going to talk more about alien books, and there's going to be like
Yes.
that type of thing. And so you sort of see that evolution with people, and I think you kind of have to do that to, if you want to grow, you have to do that, because there's only so many ways you can talk about Jim Lee X-Men #1. Like there's just is only so many ways to do it. And there's only so many types of videos that people are interested in watching about it.
Yeah.
So you
Yes.
have to
Well, the
try to
other thing
find other
is,
ways to talk about stuff.
you have to you also, okay, the other thing is, people can tell when there's excitement there. And when the excitement is there,
Mm,
and when you talk about something, it makes it exciting for the viewers, right?
yeah.
And when you talk about the stuff that you love, you get excited, you know? And that's also very important to me, right? With the people that I bring on my channel, I love bringing those people on the channel that I can get into those moments with, you know? I can get into finding out about things that they love when they started collecting, and they get excited talking about it. And it might be something that I'm into. You know, I had Joe Benitez on a show the other night, and Joe Benitez is one of my favorite GI Joe artists, you know, and I loved his stuff. I loved GI Joe during that time period of those old Image Devil Do books, and he's a big GI Joe fan. And here I am bullshitting about GI Joe, you know, hey, what was the first GI Joe you got? And he's telling me, oh man, my first GI Joe was this, and it was so cool. This is when I got it. It was at this store, and he says the store name, and I go, dude, that's where I got my Zartan. You know, that type of stuff is what I love. I love hearing that excitement, and then, you know, you get to the point where you're riffing on each other, and that conversation is, it's very primal. You know what I mean? For
Mm,
especially for men, right? You tell stories. We would go to the comic shop, and you'd have those conversations. You do that, you know, when you're just hanging out, when you're at the bar, you're shooting the shit with your buddies. Those are the fun moments, and that's becoming your content also now, right? Um,
yeah.
it's very interesting. This content's so broad, but I think that we're seeing this growth because of like Joe Rogan, and you know, the long form conversation podcasts, that that's like what's the word for it? That's like the thing that is that's the biggest growth in content creation. You
Right.
know what I mean? That's
Well, I
going
think
on.
people,
That
yeah,
style.
ultimately, I think people are looking. It's weird. We're kind of in this weird world where people both want these sort of snackable content, TikTok, Instagram reel, while they also want to listen to like the 3 hour podcast about
Yes.
metaphysics, you know. And
Yes.
it's just like, so people want both. And I think there's just a hunger to, you know, find connections and go in depth about things that you really enjoy and like, and have those conversations. And that's kind of why, like, you know, I like just having a show like this where we can just kind of mix it up. Like, it's, you know,
Yep.
I don't know if everyone likes this type of approach to a content, but you know, it's sometimes there's the, hey, here's the top 10 list. And then sometimes it's like, here's the CGC gonna mess up video.
Yep.
And then here's, you know, the conversation about content creation, which is very specific and niche, but maybe people are interested in this type of thing. But
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting thing as far as how you kind of cultivate the atmosphere on your channel. And that's something I think about a lot. And to just put one back point on the, you know, drama, comic book drama, and it's sort of selling and stuff. And, you know, I think on the one hand, yes, I think drama definitely sells, but I think more than anything, the thing that sells the most is people just want to watch, or people want to listen to what they want to hear. People
Yeah.
are looking for the confirmation bias in some kind of way.
Oh,
If they want
yes.
to hear about drama, that's where they'll go. If they want to hear about old stories of comic books being found in barns, they're going to go there as well. You know,
Yep. Yep.
so you can, the cool thing is you can cultivate the audience. You know, they'll come to you if that's what you're into. And so I want to bring it back to, you know, comic culture and where we're at. It's interesting how I feel like the last couple of years, maybe since C2E2, 2022, as the economy has gotten tougher, as comic prices have gone down quite significantly, that's when drama really started
Oh,
to
yeah.
pop off. That's when things got really cynical, I think, in comic books. And then that's where, you know, the anecdotal evidence of like, oh, well, if I talk drama, like that's what people are going to want to watch. But it's funny because if you go back to 2021, you know, and we did videos about like, here's 10 sleeper books to
Yeah.
pick up, you know, when
Yeah.
prices were going up and everyone was like feeling like they got rich, like that was the content that
Yeah.
everyone wanted to watch.
Yeah.
So really at the end of the day, it's like, it's what people want to hear, however they're feeling is really
Well,
where the culture is. And I'll hand it off to you and just say, like, I'm just hoping that comics might start to turn that corner where we can start to be. I liked it when people were excited about the movies. I liked it when people, yeah, that to me is fun. You know, I want to get back there. I just don't know if we can.
I felt that I felt that really heavy at the beginning of this year. And I told myself, okay, one of the things I'm going to do this year is I'm going to get my content back more to about comic books and collecting. Every once in a while, you know, that's kind of why, like, I have just the segment where I leave to the drama stuff.
Right.
My content is like, I do 4 shows a week, right? I do 4 live shows a week that are anywhere from 2 hours to 5 hours sometimes, you know what I mean? And the types of content that I talk about are different on every show. You know, I talk about hot 10 books on the secondary market. I talk about the market report for all types of collectibles. I talk about the news that's coming out, that's happening that week in comic books. I talk about FOC books and new books out that Wednesday. And these are all on different shows. I talk about nostalgia. I talk about, you know, drama. So I've got my head in so many different things, but not all people watch all those things. So they only know me from one area. You know what I mean? So I think that's very important. But I told myself that this year I'm going to keep it as much as I can about getting back into that fun nostalgia, being positive as for the most part about things that I talk about. You know, I started reading more. I said I'm going to read more books. The Skybound stuff has really changed my mind on my, comic books content, the stories. There's so many bad books out there that are being written, but every once in a while you get a book like Doom, the Doom one shot that is just so good that it changes your mind. So I'm trying to find those books, and I'm forcing myself to read more. I got called out for talking bad about the new DC storyline that's going on, Absolute Power, because I'm not a fan of Amanda Waller. I think she's a terrible character, and I'm like, it's garbage. I've heard that it's garbage. I'm gonna call it garbage, and I'm not gonna read it. And somebody called me out, and I saw that, and they're like, just say you don't like Amanda Waller, and that's why you're not gonna read it. Don't call it garbage. You don't know. And I went, you know what? You're right. So I'm gonna read it now. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of forcing myself to do that and try and think a little bit more positive about things and make the content fun. So that's been one thing. And in doing so, it's made me feel a little bit more positive about comics. Plus, like I said at the beginning of this, conversation, there are things that are good in comics. You can see that spark happening again. The Deadpool Wolverine stuff was fantastic. I mean, hopefully they can continue that. The content that these big companies are putting out needs to be good. Marvel and DC needs to have writers doing good stories, putting in stuff out on time, having these good writers come back. There's some dog shit writers out there that keep getting jobs, and I don't understand how. For the most part, the big companies are kind of shitting the bed, but places like Image are continuing to put out amazing stuff. Ghost Machine stuff, amazing. Skybound, amazing. The Boom Studios sale, and now we're hearing all this cool stuff about Berserk and Something is Killing the Children's got a new excitement going on it. There is Department of Truth has got some things going on. We're hearing the EC stuff that's going on right now with Oni and those two series and the anthologies that's going on there, and it's got people excited. People are getting excited about stylized comic book art again. We've got people like Jay Stevens and Sanford Green and Nick Dragotta and this Absolute DC all-in stuff. These are all exciting things to talk about that are really cool about comics. And if the big companies like Marvel or like Disney and Universal or DC see that and say, okay, we really need to make sure that the next Star Wars is good. It's got to be good. We cannot, make a mistake on this.
Yeah.
We really need to make sure that the next Avengers, that this Doom stuff is good, because people are excited for it again. They aren't going, it's going to be dog shit. They're excited again. So make sure you hit that out of the park. If Star Wars puts out another, crud thing, Acolyte was horrible. Ahsoka didn't hit like we thought it would. Obi-Wan didn't hit like it should have. Like, they have to put out something good, or they're gonna lose so many hardcore fans that are just like, I can't take another disappointment, and the big companies need to do that. If they do that, holy cow, man, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. I'll leave it at this. My last, when prices were starting to go down and everyone was really cynical, I think I had videos 2 years ago and stuff. I just said, just close your eyes and envision yourself in the future. It's 2028. It's Avengers Secret Wars. You just get your popcorn. It's a full pack theater. You sit in the middle of the crowd and you see Robert Downey Jr. At the time I thought he was going to be Iron Man, but in this instance, it's going to be Dr. Doom there.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to envision that people are not going to be excited at that point once again, and actually today, even with DC, they just released this Christopher Reeves Superman kind of special. And that's another one too, man. I think everyone forgets how great Superman is. Yeah. And if that movie can be a B+ or better, I think that is going to be something that's pretty special.
You hit it on the head. Listen, Wolverine or Deadpool Wolverine wasn't a 10. I don't think it was Endgame, but it was really
It
good.
was so fun. Yeah.
And it was fun. They hit correctly on the fan service call outs. It wasn't a bad movie. It was a 9 or an 8, an 8 or a 9 for a movie. You know what I mean? And that is what we mean. We don't have to have a 10 all the time, but it's got to be an 8 or a 9 when it's Disney or, you know, Star Wars or Marvel or DC. I want more that nostalgia hit. Superman, we get excited when we talk about what Superman was. We don't get excited about talking about what Superman is. That means that there's a problem. That means that Superman isn't Superman anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that needs to be fixed. All those characters, you know, for me, I wasn't into GI Joe as much as I was, but as soon as Kirkman got it, and I thought to myself, this is exactly what I want. I want good GI Joe stories. I want it to hit on nostalgia. I want it to make me love these characters again, and I know who the characters are. I want them to keep that with them, and he's done exactly that. And he's done it on 2 major fields with Transformers and GI Joe, and it's a nostalgia hit, and we're happy about it, and we're excited, and there's nothing more powerful than that nostalgia drug.
Oh yeah.
It'll move mountains, man.
Well, I definitely want the team who did Top Gun 2. Just be like, to get those creative teams, have them make the GI Joe movie, because that would be something special.
Yeah. Well, we got to get something. I'll take a Tarantino though. That would be pretty cool. I want to see a Robert Kirkman written with Tarantino style, like, you know. We're adults now. I don't need a kids movie. We're adults. That's what Deadpool Wolverine proved to me, that
is
you
true.
don't have, Disney, you don't, and these big companies, you don't have to do kids anymore. We're adults that grew up with toys. The adults will buy the toys still, and so will kids. So
I think the millennials are the ones that are keeping the demo afloat. I mean, not to derail, I'm going to let you go because I've kept you for so long, but
yeah,
it's funny because in the advertising world, it was always the young demographic. When we were in high school, our age group, we were the target demo. Now it's actually millennials. We're still the target demo. We're still the biggest spending power. And you look at a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine, it made $1 billion, but think of how inside baseball it is, and how much it had to build off of like insider knowledge of decades of Marvel movies and Fox Disney acquisition. Like if your mom saw it, she was like, I don't know any of this stuff, but I don't think it mattered. They still did a good job, you know, with it, and it made $1 billion. So I think you're right. I think we're just in that age. We're just, you know what, sell to the adults who buy toys at this point, because they still have money to spend.
That's your market. Yeah. Make your market happy. Don't piss off your market. That's the key, you know, and it's the same way in content, to bring it all full circle. It's the same way in content. You know, those people that are with you every episode, or that, you know, contact you and say, hey, this is what we love. You also have to listen to them sometimes about what you're doing. And, you know, sometimes you gotta pay attention to that market.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the people who are on my YouTube enjoyed our conversation with Bryan McClay from Beyond Wednesdays. Bryan, maybe you can let those people know where they can find you, what you got coming up.
You can find me over at Beyond Wednesdays. We do 3 live shows a week. Tuesday nights, we do an industry centered show. Wednesday night, it's more about those new comic book day and collectible talk. Saturday night is pure mayhem, modern comic mayhem. That's where you get that comic book drama alert segment. But we also talk about news of the week on that show and other stuff. And then every Friday night, you can catch me on the House of Stein for the hot 10 books on the secondary market, the House of Stein, Ben Stein list. So, yeah. And if you guys enjoy spending your money on comic books and collectibles, I'm on Whatnot and selling on YouTube live sales too. So find me there.
All right. Well, I'll have the links in the description. And Bryan, thanks again for taking the time, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Appreciate you, brother. Anytime.